5 things we learned from Season 5 of Drive to Survive. Formula One fans, the wait is over. The long-awaited 5th season of Formula One Drive to Survive, which takes place in the year 2022, is now on Netflix. Many people think that the docuseries is to blame for the recent rise in popularity of F1, especially in the United States, because it shows what goes on behind the scenes of a sport that takes place all over the world. It shows what's going on the track and, in a way, puts the stories that come out of the paddock, circuit and media circus into some kind of context. But what did we learn from it? In this video, we'll take a look at 5 interesting things we learned from this season's Netflix hit. So let's start with the video. Even though Max Verstappen and Red Bull won both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships well before the season was over, 2022 had plenty of drama, heart-wrenching moments, and daring overtakes for the show to focus on. Not that Netflix needs real drama to make the shows more interesting. People have said that the company takes too much artistic liberty. Esteban Ocon recently said that the show gets it wrong when it shows him taking 8th place in France and saying, "This was just like a win. I probably said that when we came in 5th in Austria or 4th in Japan, but not when I came in 8th, he told reporters. Verstappen didn't want to be on Season 4 because he thought the show made up rivalries between the drivers to make things more exciting. Still, the behind-the-scenes look helps make up for the sport's lack of exclusivity and brings in new fans. It adds a level of depth that is often missed when it focuses on points and podiums because it looks at parts of the sports that most people don't see. With all of that in mind, the new season of DTS, which was released on Netflix towards the end of last weekend, had a lot to live up to. There was drama on the track and controversy off the track, but the reviews have been mixed because some important moments were missed in the 10 episodes. With that in mind, let's start with the 5 things we learned. Number 1. Driver safety was a theme in Episode 8, Alpha Male, which focused on AlphaTauri's Yuki Tsunoda, a Japanese driver who has had trouble in the last 2 seasons. In 2023, when Nick de Vries joins the Italy-based team as a rookie, he will be the veteran of the team. As the episode began, it followed Tsunoda during the weekend of the Japanese Grand Prix. Viewers saw footage from Tsunoda's car of the rainy race and the dangers that came up because it was hard to see. Onboard cameras showed how the rain and spray from other cars made it almost impossible for the drivers to see on that Sunday. Sebastian Vettel complained about it on the radio, and Alex Albon agreed with him as well. Fernando Alonso told his engineer to tell him detailed information because he couldn't see anything. In the next frame, Alonso and Vettel suddenly crash into each other. Carlos Sainz of Ferrari eventually aquaplaned into a wall, and advertising board pieces hit Gasly's car. But Netflix didn't show Gasly's close call with a recovery vehicle on the track, which reminded people of the accident that killed Jules Bianchi at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix. Gasly told reporters on Sunday that he was 2 meters away from it, and the FIA later said that the recovery vehicle shouldn't have been sent out yet. The Frenchman, on the other hand, was fined for speeding when the red flag was up. Meanwhile, Zhou Guanyu's scary crash at Silverstone was shown in a dramatic way with a long break to show how other teams reacted. Before the outcome, no serious injuries were shown. This was similar to how Netflix and box-to-box films showed Romain Grosjean's fiery crash at the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix. F1 made changes to the roll hoop for 2023 because Zhou's car broke off of it as he skidded across the track, rolled over the barriers, and crashed into the fence. Number 2. The members of the Piranha Club fight over porpoising. In addition to the fights on the track, there is a whole other game going on in F1's Piranha Club, the sport's politics and the rivalries between the team bosses. Even though it is a sport that is based on technology, there are often political conflicts. One of these is between Toto Wolff of Mercedes and Christian Horner of Red Bull. This year, their fights were mostly about a problem called porpoising that affected many teams, especially Mercedes. But even as teams found ways to fix the problem, the Silver Arrows kept having trouble. Netflix was at the Canadian Grand Prix when Wolff and Horner got into an argument during a meeting of team bosses. Wolff wanted all the cars on the grid to be changed to make them behave better, and he slammed teams that didn't agree. Wolff was acting for the cameras, so Horner told him that if he had a problem, he should change his car. Number 3. Christian Horner does not need any friends. Another issue, the cost cap, caused a lot of trouble over more than one race weekend. After the FIA confirmed that Red Bull had spent more than they were allowed to, Horner went from denying the charge to calling it a miscalculation. One of the most interesting parts of the story was how Netflix showed what happened behind the scenes when Horner met with FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem during the weekend of the US Grand Prix. Many of Red Bull's competitors, like McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown, said that going over the cost limit should be punished. The teams tried to put pressure on the system, F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali told Netflix. If you don't follow the rules, you should get a penalty. The Red Bull team principal's report to his team was shown, but nothing from the meeting between Horner and Ben Sulayem was shown. In the end, Red Bull was fined $7 million and had to do 10% less aerodynamic testing for a year. Number 4. Netflix skipped some vital storylines. It is understandably hard to sort through a 9-month season and choose themes for 10 episodes that last more than 30 minutes each. There is nothing inherently wrong with not focusing on George Russell's first win at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix or limiting coverage of Kevin Magnussen and Haas's first F1 pole. But Netflix also left out some important and dramatic events, like the radio row between Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, who were both on the Red Bull team. Other important things were left out that, if talked about, could have helped the F1 community move into a new era as the audience gets more diverse. For one thing, Sebastian Vettel, who was in his last season, didn't show up on Netflix very often. The well-known 4-time world champion has always spoken out about issues that are important to him, like the environment and human rights. He wore a Same Love Pride shirt to the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix, held a karting event for women only in Saudi Arabia, and brought attention to the climate crises in different parts of the world. These positions are even more important now that the FIA has put in place a rule that makes it harder for drivers to make political, religious, or personal statements or comments without getting permission first. The new rule was added during the last break, but Netflix didn't talk about it. Netflix also chose not to show different kinds of verbal and online abuse. Max Verstappen spoke out about the bad things people said about him and his family after a scandal in Brazil. Lando Norris said that he had gotten death threats online, and he and his ex-girlfriend have talked about the hate they both got. During the weekend of the Austrian Grand Prix, some fans were called racist, sexist, and anti-LGBTQ+. This was reported on social media by people who were at the race. Vettel and Hamilton were two of the drivers who said something about it. Then, during the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend in July, F1 started the Drive It Out campaign. Number 5. DTS says goodbye to its star as an anti-hero comes to the fore. During Season 5, Netflix showed a lot of good times, like when Gasly and Tsunoda sang Adele's Hello, and when Steiner and Ferrari's Mattia Binotto hung out in a vineyard. It also stuck to the traditional story arc by making it clear who the villain and rising stars were, and giving a nod to who fans might think of as the hero. After Daniel Ricciardo and McLaren mutually agreed to part ways at the end of 2022, he was left without a seat. The docuseries told a lot about last year's crazy, silly season. This is the time when drivers, and sometimes team bosses, play musical chairs to decide who will drive for them the next season. For example, Steiner told Kevin Magnussen that Ricciardo wanted 10 goddamn million to join Haas. In the 6th episode, McLaren's Zak Brown tried to trade Ricciardo for Oscar Piastri, who was Alpine's backup driver. In the end, Ricciardo became the 3rd driver for the Red Bull team, but Piastri was involved in a complicated legal battle. McLaren won the battle for the driver, who Horner said could be the next Max Verstappen. Gasly was put in the open seat by Alpine. In another part of the grid, the big mover of the silly season has joined the dark side. Fernando Alonso was one of the first important players to switch teams. He went from Alpine to Aston Martin and took the seat that Vettel had left open. Aston's press release told Alpine about the change. On the show, Alonso said, "Goodbye, I'm still a bad guy," and then he walked out of the frame. Let us know your thoughts and opinions about this season's Drive to Survive. 2022 was not as interesting as 2021, we agree, but we still saw an interesting season. Leave your comments down below, like and subscribe, and as always, see you in the next video.